The Resident Evil 1 remake has been a game I've looked at and wanted to love. I like other games in the series and I'm a fan of horror in general. Survival horror is among my favourite genres, to be perfectly honest, and yet somehow this game, no matter how many times I try it, has never managed to impress me. The furthest I've got is just past the Jill sandwich part. Not very far, I know, but I've reached that part maybe 3 times now and always give up for one reason or another. I'm recording this part of the video before jumping back into Resident Evil Remake so I can talk clearly about what my gripes have been thus far. And thinking about it, I don't even know what my gripes are other than always getting annoyed at the lack of inventory spaces, even as Jill. The aim of this video is to at least give me a reason to play the game to completion and tick the game off, so I can properly give my opinion on it, seeing as though I've played literally every other main entry in the series, much more than this one. I'll be playing the Steam version of the game, and admittedly will be live streaming the game over on Twitch, link in the description, so there's a chance of someone knowledgeable about the game coming in to give me advice along the way. That shouldn't cloud my judgment of the game though. I've rambled more than long enough now, so let's begin. This video was originally going to be kind of like a journal, covering all the shit with Resident Evil that I found difficult or simply didn't like, and give an argument as to how the game hasn't aged well. The problem is, I don't agree with that anymore. The truth of the matter is, this game is potentially very difficult to initially get into, but once you get past the initial hurdle, you'll find yourself getting really fucking immersed. The more I played, the more I found myself loving the journey through the Spencer Mansion, the residence and the Umbrella Labs. I didn't even know how much of the game took place outside the mansion, and I think that's one of the reasons I didn't feel compelled to carry on with the game every other time I've tried it. It felt like the story was going to be too contained. I actually thought it'd be as easy as finding 4 keys, finding 4 masks, finding 2 metal and stone objects, then fighting a boss. Instead, I was shocked to see that it ends up being more along the lines of finding 3 keys, fighting a boss, finding 4 masks, fighting another boss, finding a metal and stone object to go to a completely different house, then find several more keys for that house, fighting another boss, finding another key for the mansion which lets you find another metal and stone object which gives you access to a boss, but then you need to find 2 emblems, so you fight the same boss as earlier but in a different location. You use those emblems to go to an underground lab where you have to find 4 discs which allows you to fight another boss. Then depending on if you saved everyone or not, you have another boss before escaping via helicopter. Not to mention all the other shit you're finding along the way that all have puzzles surrounding them. Some of which I didn't even solve in my first playthrough, and so I had a reason to go back and play the game again to figure them out. On starting the game, I chose to play as Jill on easy difficulty. Not very easy I might add, but the middle option of the 3 difficulty options I had. I did this because, quite honestly, I've tried long enough to get into this game, and have struggled each time, so I reckon that it'd be a smart idea to pick a difficulty that's not too challenging. In retrospect, I should have chosen normal difficulty, which is the hardest unlocked for a first playthrough. I found myself having an insane amount of resources, and anytime I died, it was usually entirely down to me having poor judgment or me just being stupid. I chose Jill because she has 2 extra inventory slots over Chris, and like I've already mentioned, I've previously struggled with the inventory management of this game. I also did a second playthrough on easy mode with Chris, 1 to experience this alternate story, and 2 because I didn't exactly get a satisfying ending from Jill's story, but we'll get to that in a bit. If after this video anyone wants to play the game for themselves, I'll recommend you play as Jill on either easy or normal, hiking and climbing a mountain respectively as it says in the difficulty options. One thing I always have liked about the original Resident Evil has been its style when it comes to cutscenes. I've seen the absolute original opening and love it for its cheesiness, and while I'm inclined to say the original is my personal favourite, the remake does a good job at making the atmosphere a lot more serious. So before you even get control of your character, you witness a small bit of dialogue inside the mansion, and it's a really weird thing to shit on, but the fact I know the lines from the original again, because of how badly translated and frankly iconic they were, it's weird to hear the characters not say them. This goes for the entire game. You no longer have lines such as,
"That was too close. You were almost a Jill sandwich."
You're right.
Instead, you're left with,
"A second late, you would have fit nicely into a sandwich."
Really? Thanks.
I don't know, it just makes me wish for a mix of the remake and the original. It'd be great to play the remake with its redone music, updated graphics and features such as the Crimson Heads, but spliced with cutscenes from the original and the original voice lines. A make your own Resident Evil, if you will. Like, maybe some people prefer the original music. Yeah, maybe. When I first started my playthrough, I had a very rough idea of where to go and what to do, and that's just from experience with this part of the game. Trying to think back to what my original experience was, it probably consisted a lot more of trying every single door, picking up currently useless items like the shield emblem, thinking there was going to be a safe box in the main hall, or at least in the same room as the typewriter where you get the shield emblem. It took me a while to be able to quite get my head around what items are essential to pick up, as well as which to carry around all the time. For a first time playthrough, unless you get lucky and find the right way, it'll probably be a while before you find your first safe box. Luckily during this playthrough I knew where it was, and I presumably saved my Twitch chat from what could have been a fair bit of boredom, something I had experienced my previous attempts to play the game. The thing is, I was expecting the game to be much harder than it actually was on easy mode, as stupid as that sounds. I was scared to burn bodies in most areas, thinking I would actually be wasting kerosene. This resulted in me not carrying my lighter and fuel canteen around with me for the first part of the game, which is where it's most useful. This is remedied in further playthroughs when you know most, if not all, enemy placements for the difficulty you're playing. Harder difficulties will have more enemies and in different places, so that's something I feel inclined to try later on. By the time I decided it'd be smart to carry my lighter and fuel canteen around with me, I was at a part in the game where I didn't need to. At all. What I'm trying to say is the game's main challenge comes from inventory management, map navigation, puzzle solving. For further playthroughs, the challenge diminishes greatly. It took me around 11 or 12 hours to beat the game with Jill, and yet it only took about 7 hours to beat the game with Chris, who has a slightly longer completion time over Jill anyway, due to the smaller inventory and the prevalence of old keys replacing the lockpick. As for whose story I preferred, that would definitely be Chris's, if not only for the fact that I felt like I finally understand the game. It's honestly a great feeling knowing I've beaten the game twice despite for years not being able to get into the game. I'm definitely going to be replaying the game on harder difficulties, and potentially trying some challenge runs of it too to get all the achievements. The first part of the mansion, where you're tasked in finding all 4 masks, took me around 5 hours to beat with Jill. This was definitely the hardest part of the game, due to how large the mansion is and how many locked doors you run into. I didn't know where to go to save Richard, and didn't realise that this big flashing room on the map was an indication. Because I'm an idiot. I just ran straight past John the Snake to get to the mask in the attic, not realising it was even a boss.
I think it's probably inside the snake or some shit.
Nope. Got it. Then when it came to fighting the Crimson Head prototype, the only reason I knew it was a boss was when an achievement popped up for beating him. What was that achievement I just got? Then the next boss is Plant 42, who you just skip by mixing together some chemicals, followed by Yawn again, who doesn't really pose much of a threat since he just goes round and round this pillar giving you all the free shots in the world. Then there's Lisa Trevor, who you just kill by pushing some rocks and don't even need to shoot once. Though I did end up sacrificing Barry here, who died probably half a second before I pushed the final rock. Rest in peace, Barry. You were always there for me when I needed you. Finally, you fight the Tyrant, who seems to die way too fast and without much of a death animation, so you expect him to return just before you escape the mansion, but if, like me, you didn't save everyone, you just fly away and the game ends with Jill chilling by herself. When I got this ending, I was disappointed beyond belief. I couldn't believe the game was over. That was probably one of the worst endings to a game I'd ever seen, and it made me want to play the game again. I don't know if the developers made it that way on purpose or what, but it made me go back and do the whole thing again with Chris, this time trying to save everyone. I probably wouldn't have done that otherwise. With Chris, I saved Richard, I beat the shit out of Yawn, which made him slither away like a pussy, and ran to the Crimson Head prototype boss, who honestly was still just as shit as before. Apparently he's a hard boss to do knife only, so that's something I'll have to try later on. Then, because I saved Richard, Rebecca was too busy to come help me with the Plant 42 boss, so I had to fuck it up with my shotgun as opposed to with a puzzle. The second yawn fight came next and it was still shit. Even more so actually, since I decided to save my shotgun ammo and do pistol only. Then came Lisa Trevor, and I did try to save Wesker here, but he got knocked off the edge anyway. Who cares though, it makes no difference. I killed the Tyrant with ease just like last time, saved Jill, met up with Rebecca and got ready to leave in the helicopter when the Tyrant returns. Honestly, this fight was the one I enjoyed the most. I nearly fucked it up and the Tyrant nearly killed Rebecca at the last moment. I had to frantically sprint around the helipad trying to find the rocket launcher to finish him off. That final cutscene of everyone being safe in the helicopter flying away from an exploding mansion is definitely a fitting ending to my playthrough. I just wonder what happened to Barry. So, seeing as though this video is all about struggling to love Resident Evil, what did I struggle with the most? Beyond my initial complaints with the inventory system in the game, I only really struggled with a few puzzles. I didn't find the Magnum with Jill since I couldn't find where to put the Windcrest. I also didn't figure out what to do with any of the gems other than the red one, and then I also didn't have a clue what the wooden mount was. I figured most of these out in my Chris run, with the exception being the gems. You have to get these gems out of the animal heads in this one room, and I fluked getting the first one by just walking up to it and taking it. Then I tried getting the other one and it was stuck. I knew it was to do with the moving head locking into place, and even though I tried to get it by running across the room, it didn't work. Turns out I had the right idea, but I was just not doing it good enough. It is a bit obscure to put the red gemstone in the jewellery box. I'd tried the blue one and it didn't fit, so I assumed the red one wouldn't either, so spent a while trying to figure out where to go. Like I said though, after you've figured it out once, it's memorable, and future playthroughs don't have the same troubles. Even my issue with inventory management gets sorted in subsequent playthroughs. Even though Chris has 2 less inventory slots and has to carry old keys around with him instead of a lockpick, I didn't really have any problems with the inventory. This is probably down to knowing when and where I will need to pick up herbs due to knowing enemy placement, as well as knowing not to pick things like the shield emblem up until I need it, and not to pick up every bit of ammo I find since it won't even be useful until later on. The best thing about the game for me, by far, was the sense of accomplishment. Finishing the game knowing you've got the best ending, with hundreds of ammo, countless healing items still left over. I mean, obviously that'd be different on harder difficulties, but that's part of the charm. It's so damn replayable, and I'm definitely going to be returning to the Spencer Mansion to try pick up the missed achievements, such as beating the game in under 3 hours, beating the game with only a knife, beating the game on true survivor difficulty, as well as beating the game on a mode that turns all enemies, including boss fights, invisible. I was asked on stream to rate the game out of 10, and to that I'd probably give it an 8. In relation to the other Resident Evil games, I'd say it's just a bit better than Resident Evil 2 Remake, but not as good as Resident Evil 4. Though of course that is all personal preference. I know a lot of people don't even like Resident Evil 4. I recommend everyone tries the game if you haven't already, and just try get past that initial hurdle. You might not like the fixed camera angles and the sometimes janky controls, but in the end it will all become part of the charm, and even if you don't necessarily love it, you'll most likely respect the hell out of it for everything it's done for the survival horror genre. I've been Torchii, thanks for watching.